Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole from the 4th District of Oklahoma. This is another one of our weekly congressional chats. Congress has actually been in a very unusual session this week. We were called in on an emergency basis to consider a postal relief bill. Unfortunately, the bill simply is a partisan stunt on the part of the Democrats. We were told, number one, that the post office needs more money. Quite frankly, it doesn't in the short term. Long term, it does. But the post office has $15 billion cash on hand. It has access to another $10 billion line of credit. That's more than enough to carry it through August of next year. Second, we were presented a bill without any reforms whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the bill said you can't change anything at the post office, even though it loses $8 to $9 billion a year. Look, the only reason why we're back is because the Democrats want to try and make the post office an issue in the election. It shouldn't be. Both parties favor postal reform. We actually had a good postal reform bill. It was negotiated by my former colleague, the late Elijah Cummings, and Mark Meadows, who's now the White House Chief of Staff. If that bill were put on the floor, it would pass overwhelmingly and with whatever funding was deemed necessary. Unfortunately, the Democrats chose not to do that. They chose to put on the floor something that the Senate has said it will not pick up, and the President has said he would veto if it ever reached his desk. That's not a solution, that's a political stunt. And so today, we'll have a partisan vote on a post office bill. It will pass on partisan line vote, and frankly, it will go nowhere in the United States Senate. It will do nothing to help the post office deal with its long-term problems. So I'll obviously be voting in opposition to that. But at the end of the day, it simply doesn't make any difference because Democrats wouldn't sit down and negotiate. And what we could do is not only put that bill on the floor, but make that bill bigger. As I said in my remarks on the House floor earlier today, if we put aid to every single American family, which the President asked for, he asked for $1,200 per every adult that makes less than $75,000 a year, $500 for every child in the household, that would be a $3,400 one-time payment, that would pass. We're reopening schools in Oklahoma right now. Democrats asked for $100 billion to do that. The President said, I actually think it'd take a little bit more, $105 billion. If that were put on the floor, along with the postal bill, it too would pass. Or we could look at the areas where we agree. The Republicans have over $1 trillion of additional relief spending. They have extra money for people on unemployment. Democrats want to go higher. That's a fair debate to have, but why don't we pass right now the things that we agree on? The additional $1 trillion, the additional support for Americans who are unemployed through no fault of their own. That would be constructive. Unfortunately, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the Minority Leader of the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer, have said there's going to be no further relief for unemployed people. There's going to be no further support for state and local governments unless we get everything we want. Well, we live in divided government. We have a Democratic House, we have a Republican Senate, we have a Republican President. If the Democrats will not agree to the basic things that we all support, then nothing at all is going to be done. The Democratic position has basically been a heads I win, tails you lose. You either take everything we want, including enormous tax deductions for billionaires and millionaires in blue states, the elimination of so-called SALT caps, state and local taxes, then we're not going to accept that. Well, fine, but that just means nothing gets done at all, even where we agree. Again, the Democratic position is basically we have to agree on everything before we do anything. That's the precise opposite of what Republicans have said. They said, let's move the measures that we agree on, pass them, and continue to negotiate. And by the way, while we're negotiating, we'll keep the full $600 payment for unemployed Americans. Democrats have said no to that, so every unemployed American is getting $600 less every week than they would have otherwise gotten. That's just a travesty, and that's a shame. Hopefully, the two sides, after this charade, will sit down and negotiate, and we can start moving legislation again. I think we could do that as early as next week. I doubt we will. We're more than likely we'll come back in September and then try and not only fund the government by passing a continuing resolution, basically keeping all funding the same, but we could add additional elements that would help Americans in this time of a pandemic that we both agree on. If cooler heads prevail, that'll happen, but it's hard to have cool heads right now. We're 70 odd days out from the presidential election, and frankly, in my view, the Democratic majority is more interested in increasing pain on the American people than they are in actually solving the problems. So I hope that will change. I'll work with my Democratic colleagues across the aisle, as I have on 4 previous occasions where I voted for additional relief for coronavirus. If they do that, we can get something done. If they don't, unfortunately, it'll be a bitter stalemate and gridlock all the way through the next election on November 3rd. So stay tuned. We're going to keep trying, but it's been a pretty disappointing week and a very disappointing day.